amendments from Representative Mike McCall. Senator McCall, you have the floor. I just want to let you know your amendments are now live.
Okay.
Sorry.
Okay, so I do have first substitute. If we could adopt that first and then the amendment, then I'll jump right into the presentation.
Senator Cullimore?
Yeah. Motion to approve the Senate Committee Amendment 1.
Actually, I think we need to adopt the substitute first.
Yeah, I'm sorry, we got a substitute. Okay, so I will make a motion to strike title and body of Senate Bill 127, replace it with first substitute Senate Bill 127.
All right, we have a motion before us. We discuss that motion. Seeing none, all in favor, say aye. Any opposed? The chair rules that passes unanimously. We have a substitute bill before us. Now, Senator Cullimore.
Okay, the next motion will be that we adopt Amendment 1
To the first sub.
first sub.
All right, any discussion to that motion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? That amendment passes, I think, 1-0. So the chair rules that that's unanimously. Okay. Chair rules that that's unanimous. All right, Senator McCall, we have the substituted and amended bill before us.
Okay. And just so we have an order of how we're going to roll out the bill and who's going to present, I'm going to present the bill, after which, following me, Ms. Paris Hilton will be a guest. I anticipate she'll take 10 to 12 minutes. Following her, Caroline Lorson will take 7 to 8 minutes, and she's from Breaking Code Silence. Following her, Jeff Netto, who is an individual from Utah. He's going to provide some testimony. He was part of a residential youth program as a kid. And I would point out to members of the committee, if we have technical questions and there's some technical expertise that is needed, Amanda Slater is here from the state of Utah. I've worked closely with Amanda. She's been a tremendous resource. And she does come from DHS, the licensing department, and she's been a valuable a valuable person as I put this bill together. So let's just jump right in. And I know this is a unique committee. I think we all recognize that. It is rare that we have a celebrity like Ms. Hilton with us today, and I want to recognize that. And I appreciate that she's here today, and she's here because she truly, truly cares. This is deeply personal to her. I appreciate my colleagues and the respect that you've given to her today and you've shown. But I want to be clear about why we're here and the purpose of this hearing. And we are dealing with youth residential treatment programs. We're here to look at our law, the safeguards, the guardrails that we have in place when we deal with children. Children, most of whom come from other states and an industry that is large in the state of Utah. Part of my concern is we have an industry with very, very good actors, but we do have concerns, and the purpose today is to make sure that we address all of those concerns as best we can and put the appropriate safeguards so people can have confidence when they send their children to Utah. So I have given you my talking points. You should have some of those in front of you. I want to run through just some key facts. So our industry has not been updated. The industry has grown itself, but the regulatory guardrails have not been updated in 15 years. I would suggest to the committee that now is the time to look at those safeguards and find a way to better protect the youth that come to the state of Utah. Again, as we look at this issue today, we're talking about children. I do appreciate there's a natural tension between the press and the legislature from time to time. I think Jessica Miller has been fantastic. I don't know where she is in the room, but I think she's done a fantastic job with her investigative reporting at the Tribune, finding some of the failures in the state of Utah, and I think that's to be appreciated. So in the state of Utah today, we have 248 congregate care licenses. There's 5,600 kids that are part of this program. So I'm going to run down just 6 items that this legislation really seeks to address. And at that point, I want to give the witnesses that are here an opportunity to speak. And once we conclude our presentation, I'm happy to answer any questions. But the first important safeguard that this legislation deals with is physical restraint. This has been a problem in the state of Utah. So what this legislation does is it more clearly defines what physical restraint is and when it should be used and when it's appropriate. The second item, it deals with chemical restraints. And back to my earlier point, there was some investigative reporting. We had a little girl, a 14-year-old girl, who was chemically restrained 17 times over a 2.5-month period of time. That's tragic. That shouldn't happen. There are times where a chemical restraint is appropriate. That should be extremely narrow and only through the use of the state, authorized by the state and with medical professionals. The third item that we address in this bill are on-site visits, some announced and some unannounced. I think having unannounced visits is entirely appropriate. The fourth thing this legislation does is brings us in conformity with national standards. It provides for suicide prevention programs. Every facility in this state, every licensee of the 248, all of them should have a suicide prevention program. That's important. The fifth item is a non-discrimination policy. This legislation calls out the need for a non-discrimination policy. Again, 248 facilities, all 248 licenses should, and when I say facilities, licenses, all those licensees should have that in place. The last item on my list of 6 is publicly posting a complaint process in the residences. We need to make sure that if there is a problem, the process to resolve that is clear to the public, is clear to the kids that are there. So let me give you some recent examples and lines of the bill that have been problematic. Line 892 deals with restricting peer restraint. Some of the investigations, as I've met with the state of Utah, we've had problems where the system has allowed kids to restrain each other while the facilities look past that, and that's been allowed. That's not going to be allowed. We need to be very, very careful there. Line 881, cruel and unusual punishment, treatment, or practices. We cannot use treatment as a way to humiliate children in these programs. We make that very clear in the legislation. Lines 412 through 414 requires reporting of all physical intervention. We in the amendment, we do require if restraints are used, that's got to be reported within 24 hours. And I think that's important. In the end, what I hope is those restraints aren't used, but if they are used, that needs to be reported immediately. Lines 971 through 977 require some weekly communication with parents and that is an important issue to me. I know through the state our investigators have found that there are children who've been deprived phone calls with their parents for months, and that's just not appropriate, and we're better than that. Line 912 through 925 requires documentation debriefing if there is a problem, and I list a specific program to make sure that happens. With that, again, as I welcome Ms. Hilton up here, I just remind the committee that we're here with legislation to help an industry that deals with children. I appreciate her being here today. I think this is deeply personal. With that, I would welcome up our first witness.
And just because it's part of your presentation.
Yes, thank you. And it looks like the chair was really gracious. Thank you, Senator Weiler, for bringing...
Those drinks are for you, but if Dr.
Dr.
Miller
Pepper
wants one, she can have one.
He's got you covered.
Hello, everyone. Thank you very much. Thank you, Chairman Weiler and members of the Judiciary, Law Enforcement, and Criminal Justice Committee for allowing me to address you. My name is Paris Hilton. I'm an institutional abuse survivor, and I speak today on behalf of the hundreds of thousands of children currently in residential care facilities across the United States. For the past 20 years, I've had a recurring nightmare where I'm kidnapped in the middle of the night by 2 strangers, strip searched, and locked in a facility. I wish I could tell you that this haunting nightmare was just a dream, but it is not. When I was 16, 2 transporters woke me up in the middle of the night with handcuffs. They asked me if I wanted to go the easy way or the hard way. They carried me out of my home as I screamed at the top of my lungs for my parents' help. I was taken to the airport and separated from everything and everyone I knew and loved. I had no idea what was happening, where I was going until we landed. This was my introduction to the state of Utah, but not the troubled teen industry. I had attended 3 other facilities, Sea-Doo and Cascade in California, and Ascent Wilderness Program in Idaho. At Sea-Doo, I was not allowed to speak to or look at my peers. The staff verbally abused me, calling me vulgar names that should never be said to a child. Sea-Doo forced us to participate in attack therapy designed to humiliate and degrade you. I did not comply with the program, so I was brought to Ascent in Idaho. At Ascent, I was forced to do physical labor while malnourished and sleep deprived. I couldn't speak to my parents because the staff said I didn't deserve to. One day, a staff member strangled me and slapped me across the face in front of the other kids. She did this to instill fear in everyone. Despite hypothermia and physical beatings from staff, there was no medical care. Next, I was sent to Cascade. I received no education or therapy there. I feared daily for my well-being, but I would not let them break my spirit. Provo Canyon School was my final stop. I was given clothes with a number on the tag. I was no longer Paris. I was only number 127. I was verbally, mentally, and physically abused on a daily basis. I was cut off from the outside world and stripped of all of my human rights. I was not allowed to be myself, hold my own opinions, or even speak. Without a diagnosis, I was forced to consume medication that made me feel numb and exhausted. I didn't breathe fresh air or see the sunlight for 11 months. There was zero privacy. Every time I would use the bathroom or take a shower, it was monitored. At 16 years old, as a child, I felt their piercing eyes staring at my naked body. I was just a kid and felt violated every single day. The Fourth Amendment in our Constitution gives us the right to privacy, yet while using the bathroom and while showering, staff would violate my rights. This is unconstitutional, degrading, and terrifying. Although Provo Canyon School marketed itself as a premier treatment center, it was hell itself was on earth. I cried myself to sleep every single night, praying I would wake up from this nightmare. The staff there were evil and sadistic and seemed to enjoy their power in being able to abuse children. For no reason, they threw me into the isolation room called solitary confinement. One day in isolation felt like a week. That small room, covered in scratch marks and smeared blood with no bathroom, is one of the most vivid and traumatizing memories I've ever experienced in my entire life. Children were restrained, hit, thrown into walls, strangled, and sexually abused regularly at Provo. I could not report this because all communication with my family was monitored and censored. And what is disgusting is the program doesn't just censor communication with family, but also with the entire outside world, so there was no way we could call for help. Recently, a staff member told me how these programs would hide abuse from the Office of Licensing. Before an on-site inspection, a text chat would alert the staff. They were expected to clean up swiftly, hide the problem kids, and force the children to appear to be happy. And if they didn't, they would be punished. They would have staff who were off the clock come in so their staffing ratio would comply with requirements. They knew what they were doing was wrong. Provo Canyon School excuses their abusive behavior by saying they are now owned by a new company, Universal Health Services. UHS, you can't silence me. After conducting extensive research, we found out that while this facility was indeed sold after my time, the practices used and the staff employed remain today the same. One staff member would brag to other students that she was the one who broke Paris Hilton. Violating confidentiality is not only unethical, but also a violation of HIPAA. This woman was employed by Universal Health Services for 20 years. She was let go this October, only after my documentary premiered. I tell my story not so that anyone feels bad for me, but to shine a light on the reality of what happened then and is still happening now. The people who work at, run, and fund these programs should be ashamed of themselves. How can people live with themselves knowing this abuse is happening? Right now in Utah, there are thousands of children experiencing abuse that do not have access to legal counsel, advocacy, or their family and friends, and who are counting on us to do the right thing. We, all of us, have the opportunity today to lead by example and make a difference in saving children's lives. I'm calling not only on the people in this room, but also elected leaders, like Representative Scott, Senator Schumer, Speaker Pelosi, Vice President Harris, and President Biden, and everyone listening to my voice today to denounce child abuse. Utah has the highest percentage in the nation of children sent here from foster care. The juvenile justice system and Department of Special Education, they deserve to have proper treatment that is evidence-based and administered by trained staff and not leave with more issues than they came in with. Children are our future. No child deserves to be tortured and traumatized. Last April, a child in Michigan, Cornelius Fredericks, threw a piece of bread and as a result was violently restrained by numerous staff and died. How many more kids need to die for progress to be made? One thing is clear. Youth in residential care are not protected by Utah's current laws. Imagine it being your child who's being subjected to physical, mental, psychological, and emotional abuse on a daily basis, or your child was left in a facility 67 days longer than medically necessary, even after a judge ordered his release. Or your child with intellectual disabilities who was forcibly injected with Haldol 17 times and restrained nearly 30 times in a 3-month period last year. This is a true story. It breaks my heart that this child told her case manager that she thought she would die in the facility after suffering such a severe beating in her sleep that she required facial x-rays and couldn't eat. These are just 2 out of millions of stories. These institutions have been preying on vulnerable children and parents for the past 70 years. That is generations of survivors who have had no recourse and no advocacy and have to live with that pain for their entire lives. Since my documentary premiered in September, survivors are finally sharing what they've experienced with the world. Children in these facilities have been even finding ways to reach out to Breaking Code Silence for help, despite being dismissed, discouraged, and threatened into silence. We must empower these children. We must listen, and we must respond accordingly. On October 9th, 2020, I organized the first survivor gathering in Provo, Utah, which brought together survivors and allies from all 50 states to stand in solidarity together. This was one of the most empowering days of my life. I finally felt less alone. Since then, I've dedicated my platform and my purpose to ensuring that no more children suffer at the hands of these systematically abusive institutions, and I will not stop fighting until this change happens. I'm going to be honest. Talking about something so personal was and is still terrifying. But I cannot go to sleep at night knowing that there are children that are enduring the same abuse that I and so many others went through, and neither should you. I am proof that money doesn't protect against abuse. Just because a program charges high tuition or has a prestigious name doesn't mean it's high quality. The state of Utah must monitor the companies that are taking exorbitant amounts of money from desperate people and taxpayers. People are profiting off the abuse of children. This is not right. It's so wrong. Children are our future, and for this to be allowed is despicable. Utah is supposedly built on family values, but the neglect by this state to address this pressing issue has brought us here today. It is your duty as an elected official to protect the public. Today, I urge you to support Senate Bill 127. Enacting this bill into law is the first step to protect our children. Thank you for your time, consideration, and for giving me the opportunity to use my voice. I have been silent for far too long. And I don't know if my nightmares will ever go away, But I do know that there are hundreds of thousands of kids going through this right now. And maybe if I stop their nightmares, it will stop mine too. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Wilson.
So, Mr. Chair, our next member for my presentation will be Caroline Lorson.
Excuse me. Can you hear me okay? Can everyone hear me? Is that good volume? Okay,
Yes.
Wonderful. Thank you, Chairman Weiler, and all of the members of the committee for having us here today. We are beyond grateful that you have chosen to address this very serious issue. My name is Caroline Lorson, and I am a survivor of the troubled teen industry. I am also the Senior Government Relations Coordinator for the Breaking Code Silence group. We are a grassroots movement of survivors from the troubled teen industry. Most of us experienced the TTI, as we call it, troubled teen industry, about 15 to 20 years ago. And after a while of sharing our experiences and talking about the wrongs that have been done, we decided to coordinate and collaborate to make a difference. And I appreciate everyone in this room for holding that space for us. So I would like to share a little bit of my story and a little bit of what I went through and what's happened since. When I was 14 years old, my mom made the excruciating decision that she felt I might be a more successful and a happier person if I received help from outside the home. I was struggling with depression and anxiety. And like most teenagers, I was trying to figure out how to navigate life. Who am I? What do I want to do? What do I like? What do I not like? All the things, right? She found a consultant who was supposed to help connect her with resources for me. What she didn't know is that this person was exclusively referring clients to several behavior modification centers and also receiving commission each time a referral is made. My mom was told that we would participate in things like kayaking and horseback riding and various sports. Of course, none of those things actually happened. She was told that the education was phenomenal and that I would be learning life skills to make me a better person. And of course, those things also did not happen. I was removed from my home, from my bedroom actually, and by two transporters who kicked in my bedroom door, and they told me, like so many other people, I could go the easy way or the hard way. But that sent the clear message that I did not have a choice to go. So I decided to comply. They traveled across the country with me, and they ended up delivering me to the facility in the wee hours of the morning. At that time, I had no idea that I would not see freedom again for 29 months. That is 2 years of my life, starting when I was 14 years old. There I was, incarcerated, institutionalized, treated like a felon, yet my only crime was needing help. I wasn't allowed to talk, not one word, to anyone. I wasn't allowed to look people in the eye and acknowledge them. Most of us can't even fathom what it would be like not to speak for an entire day. Nonetheless, months at a time. This is incredibly psychologically distressing. And it is especially dangerous to youth who have mental health needs. I wasn't allowed to look out windows or make eye contact, as I mentioned. I wasn't allowed to move freely or even turn my head without permission. Or I was threatened with physical restraint. I was told that if I tried to run away, that staff and students would be allowed to break my legs. And as a student there, or a resident there, we were encouraged to do the same thing to anyone who tried to run. We were told to stop them by any means. We were also told that if we did run, that we would be shot by the neighbors. They assured us that the locals knew who we were and they wouldn't hesitate to unload on us. I witnessed the most extreme medical neglect. Many girls developed cradle cap or actually grew mold in their hair. I witnessed a friend of mine dislocate her arm, and for 2 months they told her to drink water. You could physically look at her arm and see the slump as it was dangling from her joint. And they told her that she was faking it and she just wanted attention. I wasn't allowed to communicate with my family, and my first phone call with my mom was after 12 months. And when you were 14, that is a very long time to not talk to your family. Although the staff let me have a phone call, they put my mom on speakerphone, and the staff member who was monitoring the phone call held her hand over the dial, and I had been primed that if I were to say anything wrong about the facility or anything negative, that the call would end immediately. My letters were also redacted if I were to say anything negative about the program, or sometimes they just weren't sent. That happened also. This same treatment is still happening. This same treatment model is still happening. And what I want to emphasize to everyone in this room today is the stark contrast that this industry has to any other industry in our nation. There is not an industry out there that provides treatment to such vulnerable populations that is so completely unregulated as this one is. The youth in our nation are experiencing a mental health crisis, along with COVID and growing up in this generation. And now, more than ever, they need effective, compassionate treatment. One program owner recently described receiving these at-risk youth and the revenue that they bring into his program to be like drinking water from a fire hose. But these kids are not a commodity. They're not to be shipped across state lines just to be placed in a subpar prison-style housing just for the $16,000 a month paycheck that is attached to them. And the worst part is, their stay will end up costing them for the rest of their lives. There was a deposition several years ago from one of the owners of a network of programs, and he admitted that they only had a 6% success rate. The same treatment model is used across the state right at this moment. Would you be willing to have open heart surgery if they could only guarantee a 6% success rate? Of course not. You wouldn't. I wouldn't. But every day in Utah, we are taking that risk. It could not be more clear that the state is putting profit, $500 million annually to be exact, over the safety and well-being of youth in care. It's being said that there's not enough resources to provide appropriate oversight, yet out of that $500 million revenue, we aren't allocating any of those dollars to the protection of these kids. This industry has been thriving for decades. How many more deaths do we need to decide that now is the time to act? We must pass Senate Bill 127. There's no negotiating when it comes to the safety of our children. I've been able to speak with some of you today, and I've been fortunate to hear dedication, concern, and urgency in taking action in this matter. My team and I have spent countless hours researching best practices, comparing statutes, and analyzing the infrastructure of states that have positive health outcomes across the nation. So not only are we advocating for the passage of this bill, but we are reaching out to the state to build an ongoing relationship so we can use our expertise to help remedy this devastating matter. Thank you, members, and thank you, Senator McCall, for your service and commitment to not only being role models for our youth, but in protecting their futures.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Horseman.
Let's go to Jeff Netto.
Thank you. Sorry, a little emotional here. I want to thank everybody for coming out here, the committee. I want to thank my dear friend Kurt Colmore, who I've known since 5 years old. I'm Jeff Netto. I was born and raised in Utah. Been here my whole life, 42 years old. I want to thank Senator McCall for bringing this bill forward, and I want to thank Paris Hilton. If it wasn't for her speaking out, my story that I'm going to tell you wouldn't be spoken about. So after she came out in Provo, I started getting questions from my family about when I was 13 years old. Sorry, I'm emotional. It was a tough time. I went to 3 facilities here in the state of Utah. The first facility was just up here on the hill, called Western Institute of Neuropsychology. It was more of a hospital type situation. Come to find out, it is a hospital. And it was the first time that I got restrained in a 5-point restraint system when I was 13. That first time I was in solitary confinement for 24 hours for refusing to take medication. The next day, because I wasn't doing well and was hitting the walls and wanted out, I was restrained into a 5-point restraint system. The difference between that place and the other 2 places that I will speak about was they gave my parents notification that happened, and the very next day my parents came up to the facility and we talked about going to a longer term care facility. So they presented us with a video of this school called Heritage Schools down in Utah County, just right there at the entrance of Provo Canyon. It's actually right next to Provo Canyon School. In fact, the cafeteria and the what we called SICU, the special, I don't know what they called it, but it was our secondary lockdown facility, was right next to Provo Canyon. I didn't know that when I was 13, but I know that now because I drive up that canyon. I'm local. This is my home. That first facility, watched this video, and it looked like Leave It to Beaver. It was just these houses and everything fine, and they were going to teach your kid, and they had my parents convinced. So they come pick me up, and they take me down there, and they always bring 2 people, white coats is what we call them. And they come and pick you up. They took us down there, and this was like a housing facility where it was in a circle. And for the first 2 months, they told you you're not allowed to contact your parents. You don't have any outside contact with anybody. No one can come see you. And that was kind of the beginning of that process. At that school, I was the only student or child from of over hundreds. I was young, I was 13. It was at least over 100 people that were kids that were at this facility, ranging from the age of 11 years old as high as 18 years old. I was the only kid from Utah. Everybody else was from the state of Chicago and from LA County, from the city of LA. So I'm from Willow Creek. It was a shock, right? It was a whole different group of people. It was more diverse than I'd ever been raised with. And so learned a whole bunch of tricks. But what I want to get to is the things that would happen in these facilities that happened to me. I was 13. I've been in a 5-point restraint system over 6 times in my life when I was 13 years old. That first one was the 24 hours. The next one was for 3 days. The next one was for 7 days. And the 4th one was for 7 days. And then the last one was for 2 days. Of the days at the facility at Heritage Schools, those 5-point restraint systems, you weren't allowed to go to the bathroom. You would be in your bed. They had plastic sheets. And you would be drugged. They would come in and they would at first they'd said Benadryl, and they'd give you a shot in your butt, and you'd be in restraints, and you'd be asleep most of the time. And then they started coming in with Thorazine. Didn't really know what it was until now. It's an antipsychotic for people with schizophrenia, which I do not have. I was in there for behavioral. I was attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. I was hyper. Good kid, good family, good neighborhood. They would put us in solitary confinement for whatever reasons. Very small rooms with little windows that you couldn't break, metal doors. And, it started out like you'd get put in there for back talking for a couple days, and then you'd have a fight with one of the students, and next thing you know, you're in there for 4 days and 5 days. And my longest time in solitary confinement when I was 13 was 2 months. After the first 2 weeks, you're staying in one facility. They had it underneath the house. You couldn't see it from the street. You wouldn't even know it was there. It was in the basement of the house. And they had multiple rooms where they would lock us down individually in these rooms. And after 2 weeks, they would ship you up to the upper facility, which was what we called SICU, the Special Intensive Care Unit. And that was next to Provo Canyon, and that's where they would lock you up long term. So all the kids that would be up there with me would be up there for months at a time, 3 months, 4 months. After a certain amount of time, they would send them over to Provo Canyon. And Provo Canyon, for some reason, had less rules, right? So they always used to threaten us, like, well, we'll just send you up to Provo Canyon. I thought, as a child, Provo Canyon was a state mental institution. Come to find out, it was a school just like the one I went to. And classifying it as a school, to me, is a little inappropriate. I'm not here to tell you guys how to do your job, how to regulate this, what to do, but I will tell you, as a local Utah boy, this happened. And this happened to hundreds of us. They would lock us down for no reason. They'd come into your room, and you're already in solitary confinement, and they'd just beat the crap out of you. It just depended on the staff member, right? So some staff members were nice. In the beginning, they had therapists that were involved. They fired all the therapists, and it was just staff members. Some of these people I've done business with, like I'm a small business owner, they've called and used my service. Some people, I still transport some of these people that get brought in. I have a black car service, and so they bring in 2 people that escort a child, and we drive them down to their facilities, and it's all done through a medical company. Now, mind you, those are probably the drug rehabs and stuff like that, but mine was what they called a residential treatment center, but they proposed it as a school to my parents. So while this all happened in that school for 10 months, my parents were never told of any of this. There's no record of it. I've gone through all my records. There's nothing. This was, I think my parents paid $60,000 to go to this facility for 10 months for me. The third facility I went to was Vista. And Vista was actually a good school. It was actually out in Magna. They actually taught us school. They would help modify behavior by sitting you down in class. You had constant access to a therapist, group meetings, groups with the whole group. You had outdoor time. There wasn't like a level system. In heritage schools, it was like prison. It was like if you got this level, you could go outside, or you could go to the bathroom, and you would get more access to things, more access to commissary. I mean, these are terms that are used for prison. And I was 13. I didn't know what commissary was. I'm Utah. Like, none of this made sense. And so I want you to know that I've read the bill. I barely knew this was happening, so I'm not as prepared as the others. And that's not really how I roll anyway. So I'm a business owner, so this is just kind of how I operate. But this is happening. This happened 29 years ago. I have 4 friends who are in the Los Angeles County State Mental Institution for life. They came from that hospital. I have 2 friends that have been in Texas State Prison from that place who were there for life after the things that happened in lockdown. The police had to come. There was a lot of people, a lot of blood, a lot of bad stuff happened at those places. And that's just right here in Utah. And I drive past this facility almost every other week on up Provo Canyon to visit a friend here with my kids. So I just want to thank all of you for coming here and listening to this. This is not for me. I got nothing to gain by being here. I didn't want this exposed. Right? I don't want to tell anybody this stuff. Right? So parents brought it out. My family asked questions. I had to answer questions. So please look at this bill seriously. It's happening in our state. This ain't Utah. That's not how Utah acts. That's not how we treat our kids. I don't blame my parents. I don't blame anybody. I don't blame the facilities. right? I was a tough kid, right? But the reality is I'm a successful business owner. I'm a single father, right? I have a house up on the hill in Draper. My kids go to a private Catholic school here in Utah. I survived, but I don't know anybody else that has from the place I went. Everybody left. They're on homeless, drug addicts, prison, or state mental institutions. That ain't help. Help the kids. This is about kids. And this comes from the perspective of a child. I was only 13. My parents did the best they could. They come from your neighborhoods. And I love this bill. It's a good step. You know, I know that there are some questions and tough things, but I'm just glad you gave me the opportunity to tell the truth, and so that my kids can sit here and watch me tell you the truth of my life. Because the truth will set you free, and it will make things better. So thank you, Kurt, for being here for me and allowing me and bringing it up to Mikkel that I could come speak. And I'm sorry for the emotions and lack of having it written down, but I do better like this. So I just want to thank all of y'all, and please pass this bill. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff, and thank you, Paris and Caroline. Senator Weiler, this point concludes our presentation. Again, I'm happy to answer any questions. And again, I've worked closely with the Department of Human Services. I've worked with Amanda Slater. She's here if there's technical questions. But at this point, I'm happy to open up for questions.
Thank you, and thank you, Mr. Meadow. Let's go to the committee for clarifying questions. I see three. We'll start with Senator Kennedy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Senator, for this presentation, and God bless these good people who have been here today to help us to understand what's been going on. I really appreciate everything that they've done to help me understand more. Senator, I just have a couple questions. One is, what types of chemical constraint are you talking about? And that might be a technical question. You're only
And you know what? I have Amanda here, so I'm going to let her come up and answer that question. I think chemical restraint is really important to understand. And just to be clear, Amanda, why don't you come up and help answer that? Just to be clear, this is something that as a state we want to monitor more. It shouldn't happen, and it shouldn't happen nearly as much as it does. We still do allow some limited exception in the bill for chemical restraint, and that is within the purview of an actual license, within our state license or a license of another state. If we continue to see this problem, I'll be back with another bill, because we've had some issues, but I think Amanda can address that better than I can.
Thanks.
Hi, thank you, Mr. Chair and Committee. I'm Amanda Slater, the Director of the Office of License of Human Services. So a chemical restraint would be using medication. There are different types of medication that are used, but to inject into a child to render them, or an adult, I guess, to render them involuntary of movement, to control them. Either their physical movements, that would be what we'd be restricting.
So the bill doesn't specify that, Senator, and I don't think you intended to specify that. Is that going to be in rules? Because it was mentioned in testimony, Benadryl on some level, which most, if not all of us in this room and listening to this have taken Benadryl.
Right.
And the question is, how do you determine what's a chemical constraint, what's just somebody's got allergies and taking Benadryl? So is that going to be in rules?
Yeah, that'll be in the rules of the agency.
Okay, because where is that in this bill? I'm just curious. And we can talk about that later.
Yeah.
That's not fresh.
Let's you and I work on it.
Because I am curious, because there's different levels, and all the hospitals, frankly, this is an important issue, is all the hospitals to do mild, moderate, or heavy sedation, there's steps to that. And you have to have credentials to do that. My next question is exactly that, is who are these credentialed individuals? What are their qualifications? I don't see anything in the bill about that either, as far as who's administering these medicines. Are they nurses? Are they PAs? Are they doctors? And if they don't have credentials, my goodness.
And I'm going to defer to Amanda again, but it has been going on right now, and I would invite you to read the story of the Tribune about a 14-year-old girl from Oregon.
But at some point,
I think that's a...
So the pharmacy has to dispense, and then somebody's accountable and responsible, and frankly, I'm ashamed if we've not kept track. Those medicines go to a facility, and then after that, it's not tracked as to who's giving this. That's called diversion, and that's a federal offense, and I don't know what drugs are being used. I don't know who's distributing those, but that is definitely within the realm of our regulatory scheme to make sure that that's under control. So I'd like to get some more information about that.
Yeah, we will be defining that in rule, chemical restraint. Senator McKell and myself have talked about that. As far as the chemical restraints, those should be prescribed by a medical doctor and administered by the appropriate people. Our office, when we have received complaints of something like that, and if we have concerns, we do turn it over to the Department of Professional Licensure for DOPL on that individual's license.
Thank you. And then one final question, Mr. Chair, if that's all right with you. Looks like it is.
It is, yes.
He's a busy man. I was
Responding to a text from Senator Stevenson's.
tracking this conversation closely. I'm curious, with 6%, we heard testimony, 6% success rate, not impressive. I agree, disturbing actually. Is there a place for these programs? Because, and frankly, I'd like the advocates to, is there a place for these kind of programs? Should we, so Senator, your bill clearly, and I see your policy, is not to terminate these programs, which suggests that there's a possibility for survival or functionality with these programs, but at a 6% success rate, shouldn't we have a conversation of whether we ought to just forbid these programs? So, and actually to the Senator, tell me about your thoughts about that.
Yes, I mean, to answer your question, yes. I want to know more about that for sure. And Amanda, if you've got thoughts on that, at 6%, we need to have that discussion, no question.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, for allowing me to ask this question.
Thank you. And for those of you who don't know, Senator Kennedy's a medical doctor and lawyer trained. So we'll go next to Senator Kitchen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have a question and then a comment.
Okay, that's fine.
Senator McKell, thank you so much for bringing this important bill forward. In the testimony we've heard, it seems like a theme and a recurring issue, all the things you've laid out, but in addition to that, the issue of transportation, transporters, in the middle of the night, taking these kids, trying to transfer them from their home, whether it's out of state or even within. Doesn't seem like the bill addresses that.
It does not, and if I could address that, Mr. Chair, I think
You can address that.
I've actually been talking directly with Sarah Gelser up in Oregon. She's kind of a trailblazer, taking the lead on this issue. She's got some language dealing with transportation right now, and I've been waiting to see some of her language drop. And Amanda and I have had a long discussion. Amanda's actually given me a lot of material to look at to address transportation, and we're going to figure out how to do that. The approach in Oregon was to tie transportation to the actual license. Tying it to a license, the standards that come with that license come as well. I think that's the appropriate way to do that, but we need to spend some more time to make sure we get it right. That issue is still to come, absolutely. I would point out that Representative Benyon is here as well. I asked her to come because she's got a funding mechanism in her House bill, which I think is creative and very, very appropriate. As far as things to come, currently these students, there's a $9 fee to the state. That's how we cover the regulatory burden. And she proposes a fee that's much higher to cover the regulatory burden. It's great legislation, and I hope to see it come through the House.
Thank you. Thank you. And I'll just wrap up with a comment here. Caroline, Paris, Jeff, thank you so much for your powerful testimony. Paris in particular, you have brought an important light to this conversation. Without you, in many ways, we may not have addressed it this rapidly. This has been a problem, obviously, in the state of Utah for a long time. Frankly, we failed to protect you. And I'm sorry about that.
Thank you.
This is about children. It's about our families. It's about our reputation. Our action on this could not be more urgent. Especially when the industry hides abuse, causes long-term trauma for these children, and ultimately preying on the most vulnerable among us. So I just want to thank you for telling your story, for having the courage to bring it forward, and we're going to take care of this. I want to also just comment on Senator Kennedy's remark regarding how far we go with this bill. Senator Escamilla leaned over to me a moment ago as we were hearing testimony, and ask me the really important question, which is, does this bill go far enough? And I don't know. It seems like we have more work to do. So thank you, Senator McKell, for bringing this work forward, and I look forward to supporting it today.
All right, thank you. We'll go to Senator Thatcher next.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have so many questions. You know, I saw the video you showed me of that young man getting knocked out of his chair violently. I've heard the testimony of all of this physical abuse. How have there never been criminal charges?
Let's go to Amanda. Amanda's been able to investigate. I mean, number one, we haven't had the resources to investigate enough. You'll see my talking points, though, in the end, some examples addressed by this bill. All of these examples are in direct response to investigation and things that have happened that Amanda has done. We did have a school shut down recently down in St. George, and we saw that. We've had licenses stripped, but I think it'd be good for Amanda probably to address that one.
I want to make sure that I understand. Are these things not already illegal? Are these things that if they became public, they would already lose their licensure, there would already be criminal charges? So the biggest issue we're having here is how do we uncover, how do we discover, how do we report, how do we hold accountable, correct?
Yes, so I will make it clear, our office does not condone abuse or neglect of any kind. We are limited by the statute, the way it is written, to enforce. And so sometimes we are not able to enforce things because it is not in the statute, it's not in our purview. We do work closely with CPS.
Does this put that in the statute where you would then have the authority to call in CPS or any other appropriate oversight entity?
We already have that, and we do refer, probably my investigators talk to APS or law enforcement or CPS depending on a pretty regular basis. So if we do go in and see something, we do take action or we do refer it. I would say, unfortunately, we don't always know that something happens, so we're not able to be in there to do anything. I think that, and where this will require reporting every single restraint, our office has never known that. It's only ever been restraints resulting in an injury.
Yeah.
So we will be more made aware of things that are happening.
I know, Senator, you're going to have, I have like a million things I want to go over that we're probably not going to resolve here, but let me throw a bunch of stuff out here real quick, because I think at the end of the day, there's a couple of different things. I mean, I'm really concerned about the idea of communications interference and being able to redact communications from children.
And that's why one of the things in the amendment that you'll see is on those phone calls with parents, those have to be private phone calls. And that will be in state law. One of the other things you'll see is you have to post the complaint process. And one of the other things that Amanda talked about is we are going to have site visits that are unannounced. And one of the other items that I think Amanda addressed is if there's a restraint, there will be a requirement that restraint Amanda's office will have to be notified within 1 business day. I think that helps. It doesn't resolve the issue entirely. And to your point, I think it's alarming that this office is in direct coordinates that often with public safety. That's the problem.
So another issue is, would you be willing to consider an immediacy clause? So that this goes into effect immediately upon the signature of the governor instead of waiting until June.
Sure, absolutely. No concern.
That is something I would like to see amended on the floor.
Okay.
Because as I look through all these different things, yes, we're not addressing transports. But let's be honest, there's a difference in transports. I used to do high-risk transports 22 and a half years ago. I was a 21-year-old kid, and I got called in to do a transport because the young man had hospitalized his father and his brother, and the young man in question was a martial arts champion. And so a friend of mine who worked for a PI agency that did these transports called me in just in case things got bad. And when I went in front of this young man, and when we met this young man, it went exactly as they were predicting. He grabbed a pair of nunchucks, smashed up the room, and I looked at him, and as a Kung Fu instructor, I looked at him and I said, "How would your Sifu react if he saw you right now?" and the kid immediately stopped. And he came with us, and he was polite, and he was friendly, and we got along. And from then on, they brought me on their most dangerous, most high risk, and for 8 months, we didn't have a single kid that we had to restrain. We didn't have a single kid we had to get rough with. So if we want to talk about transports, I was a 21-year-old kid, and my only experience was teaching Kung Fu. If we are going to be having these transports, they need to be getting mental health training. They need to be learning de-escalation tactics. They need to go through a CIT program that we put police through. We should not be allowing these people to go and interact in these highly emotional, highly volatile situations without being prepared to deal with the behavioral and mental health aspects. And frankly, I don't know that we should even allow transporters unless there is a physical risk. These are all things that I don't see addressed. And,
Right.
I understand that
Yeah.
sometimes bills get too big. There's too many things you're trying to put in there, which is why I can't believe I'm saying this after running legislation for years to get rid of all our damn commissions. But we might need yet another damn commission to dig in and really get to the bottom of all of these issues. And frankly, Jeff, I'd like to see you on that commission.
Okay.
And I don't disagree with Senator Thatcher, and that's why Amanda and I have had lengthy discussions on how to do transport, and why I'm in direct communication with Senator Gelser. That's something that she's tackling. She tackled a lot of reform last year. This year she's tackling parts of transportation. We may be able to get some of it done this session. I'm hopeful we can, but it is complicated. I like the concept of tying it to a license, because that comes with a certain level of training.
Certified if you are going to be transporting, period. I don't know if we can work that out this year, but frankly, I'd like to see the commission put together. Yes, I know, yet another commission. But really, the only thing I'd really like to see is I want to see an immediacy clause in here.
Okay.
Because I don't want anyone else to have to go through what Caroline and Paris and Jeff went through. And Jeff, your testimony was outstanding. You moved me, brother.
Sorry.
And if it weren't COVID, I'd come over and hug you.
Thanks, Bob. Appreciate it.
Well, we can all thank our own senators for that.
It's my friend, I'm hugging you.
Senator,
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Senator, for this bill. And there's no words sometimes. I'm so sorry. Clearly, the state failed to protect children and still failing, which is problematic. So what I'm trying to understand in process-wise, because parents are obviously, these are minors that we're talking about, so parents are somehow signing a waiver, in a way, correct, to allow their children to enter into these facilities. I mean, how are we dealing with that child versus, for example, when someone gets to hospital in the state of Utah, they take away their ability to make decisions, and how are those kids treated? I mean, why are they having to be treated with less process-wise? Is it because the parents are signing a waiver, basically their lives? Is that what they do?
I think that, Amanda, that's a better question for you.
Yeah, the parents do sign the consent for treatment in those facilities. As far as the standards, I can't speak to the differences between the health care facilities and our standards, but it would be the same consent treatment.
So, yeah, so I guess
They sign off custody.
sign off custody of the child to the facility, is that what it is?
Yes.
Legally?
I'm not sure if it's legal custody. I think it's a guardianship, but I'm not 100%
Guardianship.
sure.
So just follow-up question, Mr. Chair. I'm trying to, we're running legislation on what it takes for someone to lose their ability to make their own decisions. And here we have entities that are privately owned, run, that are not disclosing prescription to, I guess, in detail, especially if they're to minors. It's terrifying. I mean, here we are regulating this other part, and children are completely being left, and then parents not being able to communicate. So I'm really, this is beyond what I ever thought could be possibly that is happening. Now, to think that it's happening in 2021 is even more scary. Clearly, some brave people have come forward with trauma after many years still discussing this, but if it's still happening, which of course if they just close that facility in St. George, is because things are happening. I don't think it's strong enough, Senator, and I mean, we need to start somewhere, and of course I can't wait to tell you, yes, move this and get it done tomorrow. Hopefully we can pass this in the House and Senate within this week, but it's not enough. We are so behind. All the things we do to protect children and everything we're doing with CPS and DCFS, and this is happening in front of us, and we're not doing enough. It's really embarrassing, so I'm so sorry. And for everyone, as a mother of kiddos, I can't even imagine, you know, any of my 6 kids going through this hell. And without you knowing, because I can guarantee you many of these parents are not aware that this is happening. So thank you again for the work.
Thank you, Senator Escamilla. Senator Cole.
Thank you, Chair. I'll be brief. Caroline, Paris, Jeff, thank you so much. Paris, it was your advocacy work that shined a light on this that prompted my friend Jeff to give me a call. And, you know, what he said today is heartbreaking. And that's just a fraction of what he talked to me about several months ago. And it really is heartbreaking. And so I wanted to commit to him that we could do something at the legislature this year to get that done. And so I was happy to find that Senator McKell was already tackling the issue and had started on this. So thank you, Senator McKell. This is a good, big first step, and look forward to our continued efforts to correct these problems. So thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Okay, let me ask, are there members of the public who would like to be heard on this bill? By a show of hands. So we have anyone online? How many do we have? Okay, let's go 2 minutes of each. Let's set a timer. Okay. Who do we have first?
David Kakaninden.
David? Okay. David. David, can you hear me? Yes. Can you tell us your full name? I can't pronounce your last name. I'm sorry. And any organization that you're representing.
Sure, it's David Kakaninden. I'm the chair of the Government Affairs Committee for Occupational Therapy of the Utah Occupational Therapy Association. And my brother was a student at River Canyon School for 1.5 years.
Okay. All right, please proceed.
Sure, I'm sure I won't go with my whole 2 minutes, but it's a very long and large bill. I've seen a few different additions for things related to outpatient treatment. And it seems like it's trying to approach child safety for any sort of treatment whatsoever. And I wanted to maybe ask some questions about whether or not it would be a good idea to maybe break those up a little bit, maybe to several pieces of legislation, because what that looks like, you know, for example, the outpatient section would strongly impact occupational therapy practice. So I wanted to toss that idea out there. I wanted to mention too about my brother's stories that he really came out with from Pueblo Canyon School and making very, very different life decisions. And we've had lots of conversations with him, and he says that there were some things that the school was doing that really helped him. So I think that to that point that was discussed earlier, I think that there is a place for programs like this. But I think that it's long overdue that we start regulating a $400 million industry like the triple team industry. I also wanted to highlight that I've approached 3 or 4 different schools a couple of years ago in terms of trying to get a healthcare position as an occupational therapist at one or more of these behavioral health programs, and there wasn't much interest. It seemed like there was a funding issue, but I wanted to also highlight that it would be important to maybe include some stipulations in a bill like this related to what kind of healthcare practitioners you want to have involved, and how you bring those people on board, and where funding comes from, etc. That's all. Thank you. And thank you so much, witnesses. That was amazing testimony.
Thank you, David. Next, we'll go to Brett Harper. Mr. Harper, will you let us know, will you just state your name for the record and let us know if you're representing the organizations? We can.
Okay, my name is Harper.
If you could maybe pull the phone or microphone a little bit closer and speak up, that would be helpful.
Yeah, my name is Harper. I'm with Bear Rod from Oregon. My dad is actually runs a transport business called Touchdown Transports, and I talked to Senator Gessler about that, and tried to get some language adopted into a bill, which hopefully it sounds like we're going to get passed. Hopefully Oregon and hopefully Utah can take that and take some of the language and hopefully adopt something that can help protect children there, because I think that that's part of the real problem why you have so many children, so many teens being sent to programs there, is because it's too easy for parents to ship their kid there without any kind of intervention from a mental health professional or someone that makes sure that that kind of intervention, that kind of transport is needed. And when it's not needed, it can actually be very traumatic. I have CPTSD, I have major depressive syndrome, I have night terrors. I went to a program, I was also shipped away to a program, and then my father built a profiting business off of my suffering. He ships kids to Utah all the time, and he hires people that are cops, off-duty cops, people that have no accountability to anybody, and they're just licensed, basically what you would call a private contracts. They're really not upholding the laws like Oregon necessarily. So we're having to do some things to protect kids from just being shipped out of Oregon to what we call shelter states, or places where we believe that the laws are too lax and are allowing kids to be abused or maybe need to be touched up. So that's happening in Missouri too. I'm helping with some stuff over there as well. And so I don't want to go over my time, but the transport part of it is very, very important, because if that loophole is not closed, kids will continue to flood into your state and into these programs.
Thank you so much. Next we'll hear from
Thank you.